Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Drinks, Jokes, and Storytelling. I'm your host, Mark Riccadonna, and with me, as always,
Richie Byrne.
Well, we got a great show today, man.
We do.
I'm so excited for our guest. We had him on before, but it was during the pandemic. I don't know if you remember that, Richie.
I do.
We were in that weird studio where Sebastian Bach drew penises all over.
Yeah, remember that? Yeah. Wow, yeah, that's a long time ago. That's right.
Did you recognize it?
The weirdest part is he traced them. He wasn't just drawing them. Folks, Paul Provenza's with us.
Yes.
I'm with you. Hang on a second. There's a knock at my door. Hang on a second. I got to go get that. Oh, it's a 6-year-old boy. He just showed
It's Paul's best friend.
I know.
Now we got to tell the story.
So Friday, I'm in New Mexico doing the Tota Theater in beautiful Farmington. See, look at me plugging. And I get a phone call. My 6-year-old boy forged a note and talked his way onto a bus and off of a bus. He talked his way through 3 adults and ended up on a bus.
I would use the term adults loosely at this point. He's 6.
He's 6. You know what's amazing is we never really talk about the kids who want to be human trafficked. We never really talk about that.
We'll edit that out in post. That was really funny.
Oh my God.
Well, I know, I never saw an Amber Alert about him because I masturbate to those, and I didn't see a single one. He's 6 years old, people. The kid is 6 years old. He went to the computer and forged a note saying that his parents said it was okay for him to get on this bus, and he just schlepped halfway across town. He's 6 years old. This is going to be trouble. Everybody needs to have a photograph of this kid on hand at all times.
I don't know. It's pretty impressive.
In a twisted way, yes.
Yeah.
You're not worry about him having initiative, apparently.
Jesus.
I told the comic I was working with, I go, you ever see the movie Catch Me If You Can? I'm living it.
You're Tom Hanks.
I concur. Wasn't that the big line in that movie?
How long was it before you had any idea where he was?
So I guess he wasn't missing too long because a parent found him, but he got off the bus and then just went to somebody's house and started playing in their backyard.
Oh, was it a stranger? That would be really.
He did know the house. He knew which house he wanted to go to.
Was there anybody there when he started playing?
I don't know. So the parents were gone, but the grandparents were there, and they were like, "Who's this kid?" And he went out, and she started talking to him, and then they said, "Oh, that's Duke." And I guess from there, they contacted the school, who was trying to figure out where the hell he was, and they took him back to school, and my wife had to leave her job and go and pick him up from his aftercare thing. So it was, Needless to say, I grayed quite a bit this weekend.
Wow.
And the thing is he didn't think he did anything wrong. When we talked to him, it was like, "Why did you get on that bus?" He goes, "I had a note." We're like, who wrote you the note? He goes, I did. So I guess that's what he just thought he could do.
Was there a signature note? Did he try and forge your signature? He's 6. He can't even write his own name.
Yeah. It is weird, Mark, because there is a part of you that should be proud of him.
Yeah, I mean, aside from criminal negligence, and all that stuff that you should be locked up for.
I mean, I'm sure Al Capone's father was proud of him.
Oh man.
So, well, then here's what is funny. So we're trying to figure out how do we scare this kid into knowing what he did was so wrong. He felt bad about it after we talked to him. But we were at the park yesterday.
After
both the boys
team arrived, he felt bad about it.
So we're at the park, and a cop is walking through the park, and he comes over and asks if I saw a certain guy, because there was a guy that was he had a golf club or something, so somebody called a cop, but it was no big deal. But I talked to the cop. The kids were in the park on the baseball field trying to fly a kite, and then when the cop left, I go, "Hey, dude, cop was asking about you." And he was like, "Really?" And he got real nervous and really scared. I'm like, "Yeah, they heard all about you and what happened. So they're watching you."
So let me get this straight. Your son got on a bus because he illegally wrote a note that, like, he pretended that it was you or whatever, that it was okay. And your way of handling it was to lie to him back about a cop.
Fight fire with fire.
Yeah.
You gotta start asking questions about the bus driver who got this note and went,
yes.
Yeah,
I agree with Paul.
That's our the call might come at any time, because we emailed the school, and the principal wasn't in school on Thursday and Friday, so we got waiting on that.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say it, but Paul's right. I mean, it was just a city bus, or what kind of bus was it? Was it a?
No, it was a school bus.
It was a school bus. Yeah, this guy's got to get fired. I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry. You got to fire.
I got hats all chipped, so you might want to think about.
We got him a bracelet. If lost, please return.
Collar, Duke. Perfect name for someone with a collar and a dog tag.
What we do again?
You should have German Shepherd. Holy shit, that's amazing.
Wow.
I can't believe you can laugh about it. I think my head would still be exploding.
Yeah.
Dude, I was in New Mexico. I had zero. You realize how helpless you are as a parent that does comedy? I had nothing. I couldn't do a thing. Even if I left.
Yeah, don't blame it on comedy, Mark. You're helpless.
Even if Richie's just saying that because he's unemployed right now. He's not working.
And I'm not a parent.
So
Richie, I'm surprised I haven't seen you at the meetings.
At the what? You broke up.
The meetings.
The meetings, yeah, Paul. You know, Paul.
I know.
It's been a great 3 years.
I know, but at least I can raise my head every morning and know that I'm not a negligent parent.
Well, guys, this has been the most uplifting Drinks, Jokes, and Stories.
Now, Mark, did you guys ever know he was missing, or by the time they contacted you?
By the time they contacted, because they called my phone, but I was at a sound check, so my phone.
Oh well, priority sound check.
Well, yeah, because I figured my kid was going to jump on a bus.
Screw my kid! I gotta.
Purposely left the phone in the dressing room during a sound check.
You're gonna have to get this kid a car.
He probably already knows how to hotwire him.
He might. He might. What does this kid watch? What kind of video games does he play? Let's really nail this down.
He's 6. So, all right. So, who contacted?
He plays like Mario and stuff. He's a very sweet kid. I mean, like he just wanted to play with his friend, and he found an opportunity and took it.
Wow. So he wrote a note. Is there any chance you could get the note and we can bring it on a future podcast? Because
it was on his computer, so I'm sure there's a way to find it.
And he printed it out.
Oh,
I think so. I think that's what ended up. But he said he never even had to show the note because he talked his way into everything. He had so much confidence that he talked his way into it.
That's how you got in the comic strip.
True.
He's the next George Santos.
Boy, am I proud.
Rising star.
Wow.
Yeah, so
I just think it's
weekend.
We've had some really bad guests on this show, and today we have a great one, and somehow your son is way more compelling than Paul Provenza.
I couldn't make up that story. That's a fucking amazing story. And you're right, Rich. It is kind of like you kind of got to be proud.
Yeah.
He accomplished it. He accomplished it without, becoming part of Boko Haram. He got away with it. Turns out some kids should be locked in cages. Turns out.
Wow.
So
I'm glad that we can all laugh. I'm glad that we can all laugh about it. Seriously, I mean.
Thank God. I mean.
Yeah, there were so many opportunities. So many opportunities for that to have went really badly. Luckily, everything's good, and he now he's starting to realize what he did and how bad it was because no one knew where he was. But when they first started asking him, I guess he was pretty much like, "Yeah, I could have just stayed at the guy's house. It's fine." Like he had no worry that he was in danger, that there was trouble that could have happened.
So when he got
rarely.
When he got to his friend's house, did he come into contact with the parents, or he just like went into the backyard and so there was nobody even aware?
He got off the bus and just walked over to the backyard, and then immediately they knew something was up.
Was he with the friend, or was he? I'm confused.
Yeah, but they went to their house. Like I think there was a whole plan, but I think my son's probably taking the brunt of the blame. Because the other kids just go, I just went home.
Yeah, see, this is why you're a bad parent, right there. It's
no question about it. This will come up in a trial.
No, it's not my son's fault. It's all the other kids. That kid who lived there went home. What an asshole!
Hey, what do you want me to do? Throw him under the bus here?
You see what you did there?
Look at him now, eminent horn.
Man, that is a great story. Did you ask me what I did this weekend, Mark? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was trying to ask you, Richie, how was your weekend?
It was really weird.
My horrible parenting.
My father has dementia, and he left the house, and no one knew where he went. It was crazy.
I spent a week just driving the bus.
He was probably hanging out with Duke.
Driving the bus around, giving people lists.
Picking up kids.
I like to do that once.
You're a giver. You're a giver, Paul.
This is the part of the show where we beat a horse with a dead horse.
Dude, I may never spend any time with you without talking about it.
No, yeah, it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be really tough. I've been texting everybody.
I will ever tell anybody about Mark Rickenbacker.
I don't know if we can follow this.
No.
This might be the end of the show.
Yeah, really. So, Paul, how's your career going?
Well, my career is a lot like randomly getting on buses. I just have no idea where it's going, what's going to happen to me, if anybody knows I'm gone. It's a lot. It turns out the story's like a parable for me.
It's a letter from the Ambularinians to the disciples. To boarded a bus. It's a lesson teaching.
Wow. I'm overwhelmed by this story. I'm sorry. It really threw me. The more you talk, the more I was like, this kid is 6? I mean, this kid should run for president.
We already had a con man. I think.
Wow. Is he the oldest or the youngest?
Youngest.
Youngest. How old's the older one? You have one or
youngest.
2? How many kids do you have? I can't keep track of your sperm.
God knows you try.
How many kids do you have?
The older one's
right.
8.
Oh my God, he's talking like Megan with a glitch.
The guy cut out almost everything.
Are you there?
That's exactly what he sounded like. Megan with a glitch. That was really funny.
And, you know, when we lose him, it's the most interesting he is.
We have to keep that. Well, he must be going off and coming back on, right? He has to know he's frozen, right?
Yeah, I would think so.
Paul, where are you?
I am in Los Angeles.
Okay. How's
which
it
now weather of England.
What? Oh, really? Is it foggy?
Oh my God, the weather here is like for the past couple of weeks, it's been insane every day in a different way. The other day it was brutally hot and the sun was intense, and then all of a sudden it rained for 2 days, and now it's been cloudy for 2 days, and I don't even know what the fuck is going on anymore.
How long you been living in LA?
Well, I moved here in 1980, but you know, until like about 15 years ago, I was almost never here.
Right. 1980, really? Because you were in New York a lot back in the 80s. I remember, seeing. I wasn't in the business yet, but I remember your name, and I saw you in Only Kidding.
No shit.
You were phenomenal.
Oh,
you were really good.
That goes back, I think, 100 years.
Yeah,
ago.
It was a while back, but you were tremendous in that. Who was the actor you were working with? I don't remember.
It's so funny that you bring that up because I hadn't seen him in forever, and then pandemic hit when we had plans to get together and we didn't, and blah blah blah. His name is Andrew Hill Newman, and I just saw him just the other day for the first time in a million years.
He has to be pretty old now.
Fuck you, he's my age. So yeah, you're right.
Wow. No, you guys were wonderful together. He
didn't originate that role. He came in and replaced somebody. Originally, the role was played by Ethan Phillips, who's an actor who appears in so many things.
Right.
He was in Star Trek. I don't know if he was on a series or a movie or whatever, but he left to do some other work. And so, because we had already been up and running, I was involved in casting the guy who was going to play my comedy partner. And Andrew walked in, and within minutes, I was just like, "This is the guy. This is the guy." And we had an incredible chemistry together. It's one of those things that you wish happened all the time. But
so Ethan Phillips had to be playing older because he's not that old, right? The guy was supposed to be in his 40s and 50s, right? And you were in your 20s.
No, we were supposed to be in our 20s.
I thought he was in. I don't know why, but I thought he was an older comic.
There were 5 characters. It was me and Andrew who were comedy.
Oh, okay, that's what it was.
There was the young comedy writer and the old guy who's Larry Keith.
Right,
he was an old comedy stalwart who was bringing in this young writer to help him out.
Right, that's who I was thinking of.
And then there was the guy who managed the comedy team who was all mobbed up.
Right.
His name was Zap. He's phenomenal. He's still working.
I mean, that was really. I really thought. I've seen a lot of, obviously, we watch films and everything about comedy, and they're usually horrendous. They usually don't fit at all. But I felt that was a really good depiction of comedy.
I thought it was too, yeah. And well, it was written by Jim Gagin, who was I originally met as part of a comedy team when I was starting out in the New York Improv.
Okay.
So he really knew his shit. You know, it's dated now because
Yeah.
you know, it's so funny how now movies are being set in like 1989 because they can't deal with cell phones or the whole plots are destroyed. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. No, you're right. It's true.
It's really changed the comedy scene, obviously. So it's a little bit dated, but you know, it's still the characters are still around. We still see those characters
Yes.
all the time.
Yeah.
In the world. But here's an interesting thing: the play was so highly regarded when it was running in New York, and I also did a national tour of it for a little while. Well, not national, but a few cities, there was very, very serious interest in optioning it for a movie by guess who the fuck wanted to write the screenplay and direct the movie. Guess who the fuck was calling about doing this play as a movie? Billy Wilder.
Really?
What? Yes.
Wow.
And when I was talking to Jim Gagin about it, he was like, I can't. It's like I can't believe it, you know. But Jim's a great writer. He's written TV for decades and decades and decades. Created some, shows. I think he was one of the original producers of like Zack and Cody. He did a bunch of stuff with Disney. He's a hardcore serious writer, funny and sharp, and and Billy Wilder. They negotiated for quite a while.
Wow.
And at one point, Jackie Mason was interested in doing the role of the older out of touch comic. So put that in the hopper with all the other things that could have happened but didn't. So big. But wow, no, thank you. I haven't thought about that.
Yeah, I know but I'll never forget. I remember seeing it. I wasn't even a comic yet. And a buddy of mine from college said, I got these tickets to this play. You want to go? And I went, and I knew your name. I knew Paul. And I was just blown away by how great you were in that.
Well, Andrew Hill Newman, who we were talking about, played comedy partners with me. Just our chemistry was phenomenal. Like he walked in within minutes. I was like, please make it be this guy because we can play.
Yeah.
And we ended up ad-libbing a lot of stuff that ended up in the script that gave it that vibe of like two comics,
right.
riffing stuff. It was fun. Fun.
Cool. Mark, you back?
Yes, I'm back.
All right. Thank God.
Are you? Where'd you go? Would you get on a bus and go somewhere? What happened?
I had to go to my friend's house for the Wi-Fi.
The funny thing is, if Mark got on a bus, the bus driver would go, whoa, what are you doing?
Hey. Children here.
Why isn't anyone with you? Where's your 6-year-old son?
I told Angie when you said about my kids already outgrew my sense of humor. She laughed so hard.
It's true. It's true. I used to watch videos of you with your kids, and you'd be doing your humor, and they thought it was the greatest thing ever. And like 2 years later, they were like, "Wow, this guy is hack."
Going to the fart joke. Huh?
Another fart joke.
Oh shit! Oh man, that's brutal. And when Gilbert had his second baby, I hadn't even met the first one yet, and flew him out to LA to do a taping. And I said to Gilbert, I go, "You got a new baby? It's great. How are you feeling? Because Gilbert as a father is kind of a scary thought.
Yes.
Except when you really process it, you realize, oh no, he like probably relates to his kids.
Yeah.
Which was true. He had a phenomenal relationship. But I said at one point, I go, Gilbert, are they funny? And he goes, I prefer the earlier work.
Oh my God, it's so good. He clicked with my kids, man. I was on the road with him, and my kids were with me, and Angie, and I said, "Hey, man, do you mind And the funny part is I think he was a little thrown off because I go, my older son really wants to meet you, and he thought it was because of Aladdin.
Right.
He's never seen Aladdin. We just used to call Axel. We used to call him Gilbert because he would do the faces and he would walk and he looked like Gilbert, real like like zero muscle tone. And when he wanted a hug, he would do the. So I used to call him Gilbert. And then when I was on the road with Gilbert, I was like, "You want to come meet your real dad?" and we went out to eat, and he talked to them, and he was so good with them, and he was just so nice. And then at the end of the weekend, I went to help him pack into the car because he had all these huge suitcases and stuff. And he's like, "Your kids aren't coming down? Like, we hung out all weekend. You're not going to bring your kids to say goodbye?"
Because he really was just a big overgrown kid his whole life. He was just a child.
What a great guy.
I miss Gilbert. It's so sad.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, okay. What else uplifting are we going to talk about?
Oh my God!
Who has cancer? Come on, let's talk about that.
I will say, I think anybody that makes a Bud Light joke is immediately put in a hack file now.
It's right up there with my pronouns are ... joke.
Yeah. If I hear any, like, it was like it had 2 weeks to live, and now it's like, all right, enough. We've heard them all.
That's so funny. It's a young comic. I said, Bud Light is the new airplane.
That is true when you're an old comic too, because you'd rather drink on the flight than eat.
What show were you in with Paul, Mark? What you said you shot a pilot?
Radio Gods.
Paul was in Radio Gods. That's right. How could I forgot that?
Radio Gods with Rick Overton. God,
yes. How could I forget that?
So damn funny. I want to put it in another screening somewhere just because it needs to be seen. You guys.
Growing up in Philly, I learned 3 things. Only tourists run up the stairs. They can't arrest us all. And Philly loved the shock jock duo morning radio show, The Radio Gods. Mainly the dumb drunk people. But it didn't matter though. It was the 90s and the gods were the dudes.
First of all, I just want to say my father was a big fan.
Well, your father is a man of taste.
Tell Pop we're a big fan of his, too.
He was very abusive.
Toughen up.
Times are changing, and the Radio Gods found themselves in a new world. A woke world.
So, we're old and irrelevant? Is that what you're saying?
I said you're not fired, and you're not. You're suspended.
Suspended? What does that mean, suspended?
Yeah, you get to be the bad guys. We're going to say that you're in breach of your contract, and we're going to suspend you for the remainder of your contract. But you're not fired.
You don't want to fire Brian because the kid's going to end up on the pole.
They tried everything to keep relevant. New jobs.
God damn, either this fucking suit is giving me a wedgie or the elf is still in it.
Time with family.
Listen, if I help you, do you promise to never talk around my friends? They already have a nickname for you.
Have we got a nickname for me? Well, what's my street name? You can tell me. What is it? Come on, the rhino needs to know.
Peter Bedpan, okay?
Oh, yeah.
Until they finally came up with an idea.
People now listen to streaming podcasts.
A podcast!
Let's do a podcast.
That's right, a podcast, because it's 2021, and by now, everybody has one.
I don't even know what that is, but I love it.
There's big bucks behind this one. Their longtime sponsor, Big Tom from the South Jersey Auto Group. And there's also Big Tom's daughter, Maggie.
Times change.
Yeah, she hates them. So join Max, Rhino, and their useless producer Skippy as the radio gods make their rise back from the dead all the way to slightly better than dead.
What if their slogan is, the gods are dead, uncut, uncensored, unemployed?
Oh, this is bullshit!
You guys were just so funny.
You are.
Everything
You guys were
you
great.
guys did was.
All right, run through the cast. Let's talk about all the comics that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, since we started when we were talking about Gilbert was supposed to be Big Tom, but he couldn't do it because he got ill, and so we ended up getting Tony V, who amazing comic out of Boston.
Yeah.
Good actor too. Good actor too.
Yeah.
So good.
He's a really good actor too. I remember Richie Voss is
Voss
in it.
was in it. Fugel sang.
Fugel sang.
Yeah.
Tom Cotter.
Right.
There's so many comics.
We had Cotter, and who else was there? God, there were so many great guys in that. Don Jameson also.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I wasn't in it. I wasn't in it, Tony.
Why not?
No one asked me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It went nowhere. You should have been.
I kept getting. Here's what I was told. I was told, dude, when this gets picked up, there's a great role for you.
There is. You were going to be the janitor. We couldn't write him in the pilot.
Well, you could because there was never any going to be. There's no other shows.
Richie, you've been in every goddamn thing I've ever made since.
I know, and I always have to have a dialect.
Yeah, I make Richie always have some kind of an accent.
Yeah.
Well, you can see how they've propelled his career. What all the agents and managers in Hollywood talk about is you got to get in a Riccadonna project.
Yes.
Look, it will fill your afternoon. That's the only guarantee I can make.
Do the people, both of them that watch this podcast, do they know how many movies you've produced or been involved with?
No, I don't. Usually, we don't talk too much about that, but yeah,
do they know about the horror movie that you did? What was that called? The one I came to the screening of. What was that called?
Oh, Days of Power.
We're the ones looking for the Chihuahua?
Oh, yes. Come on in.
Days of Power, about the farm.
Yeah, there's the Southern con men, and they abducted a bunch of pop stars.
Right. Yeah, that was amazing. He's actually produced real bona fide movies.
Yeah. He's being really nice to you right now, Mark.
I know.
It's the guy who made the Aristocrats. I mean, come on.
I know.
No, he showed up with a letter.
Now that he's right.
They let him produce this movie.
Now that I think about it, I went to lunch with an agent the other day, and Mark's name came up, and the agent said, "There is nobody who has more like gumption than Mark Riccadonna." And he said, Mark Riccadonna will go anywhere and do anything just to be involved in the movie, the TV show, the play, whatever it is. He never, and I'm thinking about it, I'm like, that's kind of what your son did.
Yeah, that's where I was going with this. It's clearly a genetic influence here. No, you are one of those guys who you just want something to happen, and you just keep pushing and do all that together, and you make it happen. It's actually kind of remarkable, regardless of the fact that it ends up being a waste of time and money. But that's most of show business anyway.
It's right. It is most of show business. People don't realize that.
It's true. If any industry had the failure to success ratio of television pilots, it would have folded decades ago.
Yeah. It is amazing how much time you waste working on projects and things. you think are gonna, just anything, even acting. You sit like when you're at a TV show or something, you just sit there for like 3 hours, and they go, "All right, we need you for 20 minutes." All right.
I'm actually, we just talking about things that just keep pushing. We're going out to the World Series of Poker to screen a pilot that I was in, and Dan Lauria was in it, Tony Dennison, and it's all about poker. And this is how dumb I am. I got casted, and they had to hire somebody to come teach me how to play poker.
Well,
well, if this makes you feel any better, I did a failed pilot about poker players as well.
Did you really?
Yeah, it was starring Daniel Baldwin and a bunch of people, and I was one of like the core of poker playing guys. So, yeah, good luck with that.
Paul, can I tell you that I met the director of this sitcom, and he said that if it gets picked up, he's going to put me in it. So I'm always the bridesmaid, never the bride.
Oh.
Well, Richie, because nobody wants to waste your time.
He said to me, if this gets picked up, I'm putting you in. I go, in the business, we call that a riccadonna.
At least I have a term. There's a term about me. Doesn't matter. It's negative. I'm just happy I got the term.
What are you working on now? You must have another pilot or movie.
Yes, he does.
Always. No, it's really. I mean, I'm making fun of everything, but no, it's really quite remarkable. I have another friend who's like that. His name is Lance Michio, and he's a brilliant guy. He's a painter and a writer, and he'll like tell me about an idea he has for a movie. A couple of weeks later, he'll send me a script. I'll read the script, and then like in a year, the fucking thing's having a screening. Like, how do you do this? It's amazing. He just puts together elements, and I guess there's enough of us who are just like, let's just do what we do, and they get together and do projects, and maybe they click, maybe they don't. I guess that's probably most of the non-stars in show business in any field, But I'm constantly amazed at how he actually envisions projects and gets them made. I'm like, how the fuck do you do this?
Yeah.
Constant fight all the time. In my experience, so little comes to fruition from every idea you pitch.
Yeah.
We did a series of sketches, and Richie, you were in it, called Checked Out, and Richie does an Irish accent in it.
No, Scottish.
Yeah,
Irish was the movie that you put me in that isn't going anywhere either.
But with Checked Out, we're trying to get it.
A very inspiring episode.
This is the episode you watch before you kill yourself.
Yeah, well, me in a kilt, yes.
I remember when I first started studying acting. I read a book called Acting Professionally, a small little book, but it was like, the sort of like what to expect when you go into acting. And the first chapter is all about how you will be a failure, that you will not make a of members of the acting unions and work, and then who makes above a certain amount each year, and it's like 0.001% make above a living wage, and all that sort of stuff. And I thought to myself, that is the perfect way to start a book about acting professionally. It was one of the most depressing things. And actually, it says at one point, if you still want to continue, go on to chapter 2.
Yeah.
This is a book every actor needs.
The most important chapter in this book is chapter 11.
That was good, Mark. That was good. Paul, were your aspirations to be an actor first or a comic first?
Definitely a comic first, but I started doing comedy when I was 16. Is when I first went on improv. And what's really fucked up is when I started hanging out at the Improv, I started going there as a kid. I started going there at like 15, just to see comedy. And back then in the 70s, apparently they didn't really check ID, because I was 15 with a couple of friends of mine throwing back tequila sunrises and seeing people like, Franken and Davis and Gilbert Gottfried, Larry and Larry David,
Well, Paul, if you needed a fake ID, I know a kid.
Simpler time, you didn't need them. Bud Friedman, I could sell a drink. Fuck it, you know.
Yeah.
They didn't care, and I guess they figured if you were there, you must have had a note. So I used to go all the time, and I saw all of these people really early on in their careers. Elaine Boozler. I remember going to Catch and seeing Richard Belzer, and all of us, you know, like my head exploding. The best MC that ever motherfucking lived.
Wow, everybody says that.
He used to host the shows. He was like the house MC at Catch a Rising Star. And in fact, when I had him on the green room, I actually told him the story that he banned me from Catch a Rising Star. It was like 2 years I didn't get to work at Catch a Rising Star because he banned me.
Why?
And he said, when was this? And I was like, mid 70s. He goes, oh yeah, I wasn't. You can't hold me accountable for anything that happened back then.
Did he ban you from coming in the club as a patron, or were you doing comedy and he didn't like something you did on stage?
Yeah, I went on stage, and we're talking. This must have been 70. Let's see, I graduated from high school in 75, so this must have been 73 or 74. I was real young when I started. I remember wanting to be a comedian at around the age of 8, knowing that was a very specific art form. Because I used to watch my grandmother. My grandmother used to love the Ed Sullivan Show, and we'd spend Sunday, have dinner, and then all sit around and watch the Ed Sullivan Show. And I remember being very clear about the stand-up comic on the show. That's I want to do that. A whole room full of people listening to what you have to say. Holy shit!
Who is the first comic you clearly can picture? Like that you clearly, because like there's all these like. I remember watching comedy with my grandma, but who was the first one that you clearly were like, I specifically remember that guy?
Well, I mean, like the first comic influence that I ever had, which is I think true for an entire couple of generations, was not stand-up. It was Bugs Bunny.
Good one. No, you're right.
Yeah, because Bugs Bunny, those cartoons were made for adults.
Mm-hmm.
They were shown in movie theaters along with screwball comedies and stuff. So there's a really sly aspect to them. They weren't kids' cartoons, even though kids loved them. They weren't made for kids.
Mm-hmm.
And all the people behind them come from a rich tradition in like vaudeville and sketch comedy and radio comedy, And so when you as a kid watching Bugs Bunny, I was getting the training of classic comedy, and so he was like the first real identifiable, clear comic character that I remember seeing,
Wow.
And then as stand-up, I don't remember, but the other weird thing about growing up in the 70s is that TV was more inclusive in terms of generations. Like, if you remember in the 70s watching Freddie Prinze on the Mike Douglas show, but he was also on the show with Jack Benny or Groucho Marx, or on the Tonight Show, you could see somebody like Charlie Callis on the bill with Richard Pryor, and so you got a real expansive view of old comedy and new hip young comedy. You don't see that anymore. Now it's all about demographics and their who they're trying to appeal to as a group. But at the time it was so I think our generation might be the generation after me maybe were probably the last generation where if you just turned on TV you could actually see a breadth of comedy.
That's a great point.
Yeah, because Milton Berle was still working, Phyllis Diller was still working. All those people were there, along with the Elaine Boozlers and the Freddie Prinzes and the Cheeches and Charles.
Yeah.
Even if you remember, like with Laugh-In, they had that hip 60s, early 70s way about them, but they were still using Ruth Buzzy and Joanne Worley and stuff like that, and people who were kind of that old school way.
Yeah, so it was a real buffet of comic influences and history that you were exposed to without even trying. If you just watched the talk show, you would see that. But it's really weird. Like, people don't get that. Like, the Mike Douglas show would have like John Lennon and Gore Vidal on the same episode. Like that. Like, so fucking interesting. Especially now in retrospect, I look at it and I just go, "Wow, that just doesn't happen anymore."
Yeah.
So I did have all those influences. And then, of course, the Ed Sullivan Show, where you could see a Richard Pryor and a Jackie Mason on the same show.
Right.
So I remember all of those. I mean, one of the first live action comedian in movies that I related to was Jerry Lewis, because I had what's called lazy eye. It was called amblyopia. And one eye was stronger than the other. And so when I was starting from about the age of 6, maybe, I had surgery on my eye when I was like 8, and I had to wear eye patches, and I had to do all of these optical exercises with these weird little setup machines where it focused one thing on one side, another thing on the other side.
Oh,
it was like
sounds like it would give me a headache.
Yeah, and I had the eyeglasses since I was like 6 years old, but so because I had this amblyopia, lazy eye, one eye working more than the other, I didn't really have depth perception because I was only using predominantly one eye. So I was all my depth perception was learned. Like, if there were 2 glasses on a table and one was in front of the other, I just kind of had an experience of, I think that one's about here relative to the other one. It was not really clear. To this day, still, if it's why I can't play pool. If I sit down and if I try to line up a shot in pool, I see 2 of everything.
Wow. That's because you're drunk, but go on.
Should be. I should be. It could drive you to drink. But so that was a big part of my childhood was bumping into things, spilling things, knocking things over. I would be turning around a corner and clip my own glasses with the corner. They would break. My parents would get pissed at me because I broke another pair of glasses, and my mother's insurance wouldn't cover more than, one pair every 2 years or whatever the fuck it was. She was a teacher, teachers. But so eventually they would be like, well, you're just going to have to learn how to be more careful. So my entire childhood was from the big, huge hunk of Scotch tape on one side. And my parents were, really strict. They were really severe, and they didn't really show a lot of compassion or maybe even understanding at the time that this was a depth perception problem. But I always get berated for knocking things down and bumping into things, knocking things over, and all that sort of shit. And then I saw a Jerry Lewis movie. I think it might have been The Nutty Professor. No, it was before that. It was way before that. And he was a big movie star, and people loved him. And he was doing the same shit I was in trouble for. Bumping into things, knocking things over, being a klutz, all that sort of stuff. So I was like, okay, I got to make people enjoy the fact that I'm an idiot. And that's really how it all started.
Wow.
I actually said, Jerry Lewis was like my role model. I'm like, okay, so if I fall down or I bump into something or I knock over a vase, I'm just going to try and make it funny. And so I started doing shtick around all of it. And that's how I started doing comedy.
Wow. That's crazy, man.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah. Weird. It was.
Richie, do you have a first person you specifically remember seeing?
Yeah, I think it was Flip Wilson. Because
Boy, he's somebody who I don't think anybody, of a certain age ever even heard of him. And he was so great and so important. He started that record label that, gave us some of the biggest stars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I just remember I was a kid and I loved Flip Wilson and didn't think about it till I was older that was probably, I actually did when I used to have a variety show in the city at Caroline's, Paul. And I remember that And it was, I had a band. We had a 5-piece band. I had actors who could sing who were in it, and it was a whole thing. It was a big production. I realized this all stemmed from watching Carol Burnett and Flip Wilson when I was 8 years old.
Oh wow!
You know,
right? And they belong in the same sentence because they both were so extraordinarily good.
Yeah,
so good and so rich. And you want to hear something wild? I interviewed Marshall Warfield for a thing I was doing with my buddy Dan Pasternak about the comedy boom. And she said at one point, she said, you know, the strongest comic influence, the first time, I'm trying to think how she put this, but basically it was that the first strong female role model in comedy that she ever saw was Geraldine, was Flip Wilson.
Wow. Wow.
She was so funny.
She's great. She's still working.
Yeah. Is she really? Wow.
Yeah.
Because it's funny because I didn't realize I'm doing my show for years. I'm doing this show and I always had a comic guest. And Bill Burr did it. And when he got on stage, he said, I'm just up here for 10 minutes while Richie gets into another dress. And I didn't realize, I'm like, oh my God, I'm just doing the Flip Wilson show up here. Like, you know what I mean? That's what I was doing. I didn't even realize it.
So you can get arrested in Florida now if you did that show.
Richie would fit in though, because he doesn't like reading.
Well, Flip Wilson was fucking great.
Yeah.
Fucking great.
And I remember
really,
seeing him and Richard Pryor together on his show was amazing. Amazing. Yeah. You know, if there's anyone out there who doesn't know who we're talking about, go look him up on YouTube because he was tremendous.
So many good clips on YouTube of Flip Wilson.
They were like at the time, you know, like 3 of his catchphrases were like in the popular.
The devil made me buy this dress.
Devil made me do it.
Devil, yeah.
You don't know me that well.
Yeah, yeah. He was huge.
He was huge, and deservedly so.
Yeah.
It's so weird that there are certain comics that don't get mentioned. They're like the oh yeah comics. That when you're talking about greats, and there's so many great comics that you bring up their name and people go oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, I've actually talked to young comics who's like, you know, I know about George Carlin, but they've never actually like listened to an album.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
How do you get into this business and not totally be into the research of it?
I know. So I said, I could be a musician and not know box work. What the fuck? You know, I don't care what kind of musician you are.
That's a great point.
I have a question. This is off the wall weird, but do you know a comedian named Chip Chinnery?
Yes. Wait,
I just bought his book.
What's that?
I just bought his book.
What's it called?
Charging Mount. And apparently he meticulously documented his first year on the road as a comic. And it's all about that.
Really?
And, yeah, a guy named Mike Green up in Detroit. He's a great headliner. He runs the comedy club One Night Stands. And he was telling me about him in the green room. I went online, found it, bought it online, and it just came in. So it's going to be my new road book.
You know what else is a terrific book about the history of comedy is Wayne Fetterman's book. I think it's called The History of Comedy.
I love Wayne Fetterman.
It's a thin little volume, but it's so chock full of like, you know, you get an overview of the history of comedy that is really, really terrific, and it reads so fast.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm gonna get it.
That's how I felt about Scheidner's book. It read so fast, I actually got depressed because it was like, I'm almost done. I'm almost done. Maybe I should start over.
But that's a big thing. It's like, you know, there's a flip side to all of that. It's like, you know, I sort of decry. I mean, I think everybody should know, you know, George Carlin's work. Obviously, I mean that's a little too obvious, but I mean, everybody should know Robert Klein. You know, and he's somebody who I've become very friendly with in recent years, and he was one of the biggest. He influenced our entire generation. You know,
I was going to say he's the first guy to really change from the Catskills to the city.
exactly. He the way he puts it, he goes, you know, there was they were all World War II vets, and then all of a sudden, you know, they were young college educated people like Robert Klein, and he was the first guy to speak to that generation. You know, post immigrant, you know, post war, educated, articulate. You know, it wasn't mother-in-law jokes, and you know, it wasn't even jokes. It was more, you know, on life as we actually know it. And he's, you know, I mean, he's a maestro. He's one of the best. But you know, Seinfeld, Billy Crystal. You go down the list of all the big names. They'll tell you Klein was one of the biggest influences because he was just the guy that you know. Robert Klein shows up. Alan King is already there. Who am I going to relate to? You know,
right?
So an entire couple of generations. In fact, when I was starting out, people used to say that Larry Miller, myself, and Paul Reiser all sounded exactly the same, and it's because we were all doing Klein.
That's funny you brought up Larry Miller. He's my guy that I remember seeing clear. Specifically, Larry Miller was the guy. I was watching The Tonight Show with my Aunt Mary on the couch.
Wow.
And I remember seeing Larry Miller, full head of hair, Larry Miller.
Yeah.
Full head of Larry Miller, probably doing one of these. And he used to do something which was pretty remarkable at the time, which was his entire 6-minute spot might be one story. You know, like the skiing story or the getting drunk and driving to Vegas story. You know, they were all like the entire set was one story for, you know, like a bunch of appearances. He was such a craftsman. But I remember back in those days thinking, wow, man, I hope someday I can be as, you know, good as that, as well crafted and well written and structured. And it's unbelievable. I mean, it's, you know, the precision of Larry's work was always so remarkable, but it wasn't obvious. It wasn't like set up punchline. It was just amazing craftsmanship for 6 minutes, you know?
Yeah. And he was a big influence on us. Well, for me, on wanting to do this podcast. When I talked to Richie about he should be doing a podcast, it was because I was listening to Larry Miller, and he would tell these jokes, and he would tell jokes that I've heard 1,000 times, you know, that my dad told at the dinner table, but he took it in his own direction and painted the picture his own way, and it was just like I just loved it so much, and that was what influenced me to want to ask people to tell a joke on every episode, because I think it's just cool to hear.
Well, you know,
the Aristocrats, when you talked about it as jazz, it was like, oh my God, this is perfect sense. This makes perfect sense.
Well, you know, there's on the DVD of the Aristocrats. I don't know if you remember DVDs. There's over 3.5 hours of extras.
Really?
One of the extras is just a compendium of, you know, we kept the camera running while we were hanging out with these people. And so we put together a thing where they just tell other jokes. And it's like 20 people just telling these old jokes. You know, it's shot like shit because we weren't really shooting them. We just kept.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's awesome.
From Martin Mull to Amazing Jonathan to Paul Reiser.
Martin Mull.
Here's a great. I do have a great joke for you, and this is a joke that I got from Reiser, but it's a classic. It's one of the great all-time showbiz jokes. It specifically kind of speaks to comedians, but it's generally show business, and it's the guy working in the circus. It's a new guy just hired, and they go, okay, you're the low man on the totem pole. You got to take the crappiest jobs. Your job is before the show every night. You know, when the elephants take a big dump in the middle of the show, first of all, who's the audience? You know, the kids go crazy. Dancers come on, they slip, they fall. It's a big hazard. So we got to evacuate them before every show. So you take this big broom handle and you just shove it up the elephant's asses right before they go on, and that'll clear them out, and everything will be fine. Well, the guy goes to the youngest elephant, and he's shoving the pole up there, and it's a little hard. The elephant he finally gets it up there, pulls it out. It's like, ooh, all right. Then he goes to the elephant's mom, and the baby elephant's mom, and he shoves it up, and it goes in a little easier, but it's still a bit of a struggle. And the elephant is stamping his foot, and he pulls it out, takes it there. Then he goes up to the old, granddaddy elephant, and he shoves it up, and it goes right in, and the elephant turns around and goes, "How's the house?" Is that perfect? Is that a perfect showbiz joke?
It is. Guys, that was Paul. Thank you so much for being on, guys. That was Drinks, Jokes, and Storytelling.
Is it my Wi-Fi?
I think, unfortunately, I think it's you because I got Paul fine. Everything else is fine here. So unfortunately, I think it's you.
I think your Wi-Fi took a bus to a friend's house.